Hello and welcome back. This is the Galactic Federation of Planets alongside the Silver Legion, and they would like to present the new Drake, Tanath and Sunfire show. Hopefully you will all enjoy it. I will be your host for this evening. For those not familiar with my voice, I am Thomas Williams. I'm just so pleased to be able to carry on with the hosting of this incredible show. Lots of things have gone on over the last few weeks that are best left behind, and we move on. But let it be known that all on here have and will always hold a great and lasting gratitude to Denise and Grammy for the legacy they have left with us. There is way more work that goes on in the background to produce these shows and the Facebook page than people realise. And I want to thank the admins of Universal Voice, and I want you to all welcome our new admins on Cosmic Voice. Hopefully I can do the new show with the same style and integrity as they did. And on that note, I will hand you over to the man himself, Drake. Thank you. Drake? Hello, Drake?
Hello?
Hi, you're on.
I'm on. All right. Well, I got a little bit of a statement for everybody. And my phone is going dead here, it seems, again. Basically, what is going on is very simple. It's not complicated in any way, shape, or form. It is basic, and yet it is critical to a whole bunch of people. And it's also critical to being able to exert the human control that everybody has been looking for to come out into the open. It is best if this is started ahead of the actual fact of what's beginning to get ready to happen. There are a bunch of things, one of which you're familiar with in terms of the transition here on the planet. The other one that you're familiar with deals directly with Mr. Keenan and I's efforts to free up the collateral accounts and get things rolling so that we can actually become free. Now, the other and third part is the critical one. It is absolutely and totally and completely important and has to be to each and every individual on this planet to start a new way of living. This new way of living is very simple. What it does is it negates any form of prejudice in terms of acting on it. Everybody is going to be prejudiced to some extent on something about something they don't like. That's prejudice. Okay. And there's nothing you're going to get around that with. However, actions upon prejudice are the problem. The instantaneous idea of superiority, whether it comes from someone cutting you off in traffic, being nasty to you or whatever, and that they don't have no right to do that, becomes critical. And it does so very, very quickly. This is not what is known as proactive. Reacting to an incident, a statement, actions of another, etc., are primary to the problems. This is not to say that a lot of this is not perpetrated on purpose, done intentionally by forces people don't see. This has been a case ongoing for a long time. And the ideology of what we're going to shift into is, very simply, an addressment on an individual basis, how you can change in the manner in which you conduct yourself very slightly to a point where you don't react, but act. This is with thought and planning. This is with understanding. The idea of somebody cutting you off in traffic and they don't have a right to do that and they're nasty whatevers because they did, you generate an instant attitude and you want to get even and go do a number on them. Proactivity gives you a cause for a pause. You don't take any action right away, and you look at it, definitively. When I started doing that when I drove, I thought, that is a real bummer. Mostly because I can remember when I used to drive like that. Oops. Now you remember, and this you can use this religiously. In the book it says, you point a finger at somebody, are you not just as guilty as what you were talking about? If you point one finger, are not three pointing back at you? I mean, good grief. Look at it relatively, look at it simply, and think before you act. Yeah, you're going to get upset, but did somebody really do something to you that caused you to burn yourself with your coffee? That's possible. But I doubt it was the person or entity that you're blaming or the incident. Very probably not. Usually that's the case. And when you pause and think about it, you don't react. You don't pull a gun out and shoot at somebody or be stupid, go try to run over them with your car because they cut you off in traffic. The ideology of trade-off. And, yeah, you trade your anger off for not being angry. Now, I didn't say happy, and I ain't going to. That comes with some other things that need to be put into this. One of the main problems that mankind has right now is this fear of the great unknown. That's the reason for these shows. We intend to try to address questions and stipulations and, well, what about this and what about that? That's going to come up in the average everyday person's mind, as well as some of these scholarly folks that have been asking some really far out and neat questions. And so what I want to look towards, yes, we'll answer questions. The next show is going to be a little more structured. And we'll give out a topic a little bit early so that people can get their head around the topic. We would prefer that you ask questions stipulating the topic as, or it has to do with this topic, and here's what I'm curious about, kind of questions. Please don't make them 2 pages long. It's not necessary. And you don't need to include everything in the kitchen sink in contacting us. Right now we got a Facebook page. We'll have an email thing set up and a few other deals coming up. Tom and I are working on this, and we're going to try to structure this a little better so that people have a better idea as to the Wednesday show. Sunday show, I'm going to try to do some things a little differently as well, but similar in terms of the manner in which they've been done in the past. So, with that, I'll see who else is on here, Tom. Tom? Is Tana on here?
Yep. Yes.
Sunfire?
I think it's me, Sunfire.
Sunfire. Oh, I was just curious if one of the two of you was on there. I understand you might have had something you wanted to say as well. And if I covered it, I hope, go ahead and say yours.
Okay, well,
Please.
I just wanted to say something that I think, is really important, and I think it also goes along with what you're saying, is that people need to believe in themselves. They need to stand in their power and stand in their strength. Also stand in their love and recognize their own divinity. And it's important that they all need to be who they are. Remember that the word warrior meant a person who is not afraid to be who they are, to be who you are every single moment, whether somebody likes it or not. It doesn't matter what other people think. If you are being impeccable, as long as you don't do something to hurt them consciously, it doesn't matter what they think. And it's something I think people really need to focus on. And really focus more on the positive stuff and not letting the negative stuff and the negative thoughts get to them too much. Because one thing I thought, somebody explained it, and I hope I can explain it right, is they said that when it comes to like putting out negative energy and negative thoughts, it's like you're giving $1 to the bad guys. And instead of, giving, all those dollars, all that energy to the bad guys, start keeping that energy, and, converting it to positive stuff and, pay the positive people and pay yourself back. Keep those, and...
Yeah.
And, don't keep feeding the negative energy into, the bad guys. And I guess, okay, I kind of explained that weird, but I hope it made sense to somebody.
Well, one of the things that you touched on is something that is going to be coming up in this show regularly. And that deals with the empowerment on a spiritual basis of each individual. Each and every last individual out there has the power to be spiritual. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about pie in the sky, unreal stuff. I've explained this through the Matrix. You absolutely decide something, it will come about eventually. It may be today, it could be next week. I don't know, and it depends on the importance to the individual. But what that means is, in effect, you get to put things in order for yourself. Why? Because you have the inalienable right, the unalienable right to freedom of will.
Mm-hmm.
And that freedom of will, if directed towards a positive, in other words, I don't think I should have to put up with certain things, you won't have to for very long, if long at all. Some of these things, depending on the importance, are instantaneous. It's just all of a sudden you go to work and people don't hassle you. And you go, wow, that's pretty cool. It goes to respect. It goes to understanding an individual position, mm-hmm. where you actually, instead of being inserted into a matrix, as in the movie The Matrix, you are, as I have said before, principal in this one. Whatever you decide, and you got to make the decision and keep the decision rolling. Don't stop giving up on it. Quit thinking about it or whatever. Write it on the mirror where you shave in the morning, or however you got to do it. Keep it in your face. When you do that, it becomes a reality. There are several reasons for that. One is that your conscious mind takes in information that goes to your subconscious. Your subconscious actually directs your actions towards the culmination of what you decide you want. Simple. Okay? Then, and this is the critical part, being an integral part of this matrix, you also have the capability, as Neo in the movie did, to change things according to the way they should be. And that's basically, I just wanted to add that. Okay?
Oh, yeah. And I just wanted to add one other little thing. We need to all remember we're not physical beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a physical experience.
Yup.
And
Oh?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Question. Are we ready for questions?
I am.
Okay. Tom, did you elucidate to the fact that Tath would not be with us?
Yes, unfortunately.
You're coming through real weak.
Right, okay. Unfortunately, she has a family issue, so she had to pull out this afternoon. But she'll be back with us next time. Okay.
Hey. I understand we got several pages of questions.
Yes, we've got loads of questions. I would like Sunfire to go over centering, grounding, and protection. If you could start with that, please.
Yeah, certainly I can. It's also posted, available on the frequently asked questions portion of the silverlegion.org website in case you miss it and you want to look over the text parts of it. The visualization part of it is you visualize a glowing net of light emanating in all directions, over top, around, under your whole property, home. See infinite fractals, smaller and smaller and infinite posts, which provides 100% coverage. You've got to have in your mind that this is impervious at every scale. And when you put this glowing net into place, imagine that it is able to take in anything that is hostile and turn it into energy to fuel itself. And then from there, imagine tying this glowing net into Terra Earth's energy field in a nice knot. This knot of energy seals your protective shield and grounds it into Terra Earth, becoming a two-way connection. And, that's one part of shielding. And then to shield your thoughts, it is the difference between using public and private parts of the mind to think with. Take your thoughts deeper in rather than the public part. And, with the public mind, it's like a different thing there. And part of the centering is to focus on your solar plexus or your stomach, and you bring all your energy in, and you just hold it there, and then when you're grounding, you imagine a beam of light going from all the way through your body to Terra's heart, the core of the planet, and that's grounding. And then shielding, there's all different types of methods. I mentioned one, which is also published on the silverlegion.org website. Drake, you want to add to this? I'm totally, really, this is more Snap's thing than it is mine.
Yeah, I can add things to this.
Okay.
Good.
Centering and grounding is very simple. First, you center yourself into yourself within your own light. That's the inner light that I've mentioned before and others have. That inner light, instead of chasing it, which you do for other reasons, you expand upon it. You cause it to grow. As that light grows, you are taking in energy, just as Sunfire said. And the fun starts when you start actually rooting and grounding yourself. Now, rooting and grounding yourself is the part where you become a big tree, literally connected directly to planet Earth. The fun begins when you then, as you're rooted into Mother Earth, actually start connecting with her as a living being. When you do that, then you are cohabiting with Gaia, or Mother Earth, and able to share power, able to share benefit, able to bring yourself to the understanding of the difference between being disconnected and actually connected to Mother Earth. Each of us, all of the people living on the surface of the planet, are connected to Gaia. We are intricately connected for the simple fact that she, or the planet, offers sustenance in a variety of ways, bathes herself in sunlight, creates all kinds of foods, is integral in a lot of the biology that goes on, both stuff that we don't consider, such as plants too much or animals, but also ourselves. What happens is that getting yourself right, in other words, it's not nice to fool with Mother Nature and you hear the big lightning bolt kind of thing. Okay, the ideology of fitting yourself back in goes back to Indian lore and legend and truth. It also goes back to our basic origins in most cases. And once you understand that, then you have a much more solid foundation Once you start experiencing these things, you then can operate much more as a sovereign individual, because you don't have to worry about the external fun and games. That pretty much answer it?
Yes. Right, are we ready for questions?
Yep,
well,
I am.
What's the protection part?
Of the shielding part.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there's different, you know, there's a lot of different types of shielding that can be utilized. The ones that I like to use is just visualizing, especially when there's a lot of onslaught of negative energy and stuff hitting you. Visualize a shiny, reflective ball that is as shiny and reflective as a mirror on the outside. And intend for, when you're visualizing it, to only reflect the negative stuff, the bad stuff, anything that would be hostile or harmful to you, but make sure also that you intend that it lets through all the positive energy and any healing energies. And for me, that's one that I know that works really well. I'm still learning some other methods. Drake, do you have any you want to suggest?
Yeah. Everybody knows what a mirror is. And one of the most common practices in both psychic sciences, as people call it, and spiritual sciences is the use of mirroring. I've got to change phones. Hold on a second. That came out pretty clean. No screeches.
Yep.
Okay. What that means is that you become a mirror. This is the sphere that Sunfire is talking about in terms of encapsulating and enclosing yourself within it. All of anything that is not good for you is reflected away from you. When you learn how to use this a little more definitively as a shield, someone would raise a shield, it is not shaped in the manner that most people are familiar with shields. It's not. It doesn't look like a convex curved mirror with the center sticking out. It's the opposite. In other words, turn that shield around, and you have something similar to your average dish that people use for satellite, something of this nature. And it not only concentrates, but actually can repel and send back to the sender the fun and games they intended for you. Now, you'll learn that at a later date in terms of when you get into and involved with the difference between our physicality, psychic abilities, spiritual abilities. You will be taught. There are entities that will teach you. Most of these are called guardian angels. Some are actually guardians of you, your guardian angel. And what you'll be taught is how to defend and protect yourself primarily. Nothing extravagant and nothing real complicated. But for someone who does not know, you should see yourself encapsulated, as Sunfire said, within the mirrored sphere. And that sphere reflects everything. All the nasties and bad goes out, reflects back away from you. Within that sphere, you are perfectly, completely protected, just like sitting on your grandma's lap or when you crawled up on mom's lap when you was a little kid. You knew you was where you needed to be and that nothing could touch you. So you have to look at things relatively. You have to be able to apply these things. If you are seriously looking to be the being that you are intended to be. This goes again, as I said, the proactivity in thought will help you tremendously to acquire proficiency in other areas, such as psychic sciences and spiritualism in general. Because what it does is it allows you to use simply and completely positive energy without a negative influence. Nothing difficult about that. In other words, you become untouchable, and the bad guys can't get to you. I do not suggest you go laughing in their face or give them a finger or whatever else you might feel like doing. I suggest you simply go about your business. Don't worry about them. They can't touch you once you really understand the fullness of what you do. Okay?
Cool. Right, we'll start with some questions. First question. If someone asks me a question 3 times and I can still lie as much as I want, you guys said the ETs are just people, so how does asking them 3 times about whether they are good or bad force them into giving a true answer? Or are Terrans unique in this regard, or are there other races that can lie about it? Sunfire?
Oh, I think I'm going to let Drake answer this one. He's more knowledgeable in creational law than I am.
Okay. Creational law stipulates thrice or 3 times. There's a reason for that. The basis of creation comes from a line segment intersect of 3 lines equally. Everybody knows this is an equilateral triangle. It is absolutely equal. All of its angles, all of the lengths of its sides. From that, and that alone, is derived all of the rest of all of the basis of sacred geometry. Sacred geometry is the base culmination of the formulation needed to allow for creation to take place, take root, and be fruitful. What happens is this, and it's very simple. There are 3 lines. So when you ask 3 times, you are asking more than just the question 3 times. Each line segment is one of the questions. When you make that into a perfect triangular representation, then you have something that is called equality. Equality is the foundation for balance. Each being exactly the same as the other, you then have balance within those 3. The shape that you would end up with when you use triangles in the number of 3, when you lean 3 equilateral triangles up against each other, you will come out with a shape when you consider it a tetrahedron. This is the basis of creation. You will not fully understand it without correct teaching at this point, but you don't need to. The reason being is that the cosmic law, and this includes all of creation, is based upon balance. And the balancing is the great energy, the great force, and the great equalizer that causes everything to balance. Whether it likes it or not does not make any difference. It is a base law of the existence of whatever. Therefore, when you ask 3 times, you are formulating a perfect triangle, equilateral. When you do that, you are giving balance the right to inflict all of its power, that's everything in the cosmos, to come to bear upon the question. Therefore, an evil or bad entity is going to feel like a poor old scalded dog. It's going to be yapping and running. It will answer, because it doesn't have a choice, your question. Do you have my better interests in mind? That 3 times, it has to answer. Are you of the light? Are you of the light? Are you of the light? If you are not, you have to say so. If you are, you say so. Very simple. The balance is truth. Now, you take all these things into consideration, that's the best answer to look at in terms of being able to apply the things you will learn on these shows. That is one of the critical points. Lately, there has come a place in the existence of different individuals, and I've heard this from several, not just one or two, that they felt an evil. They did not feel right about this or that or something else. And not even knowing what it was, some of these people said, go away. Who bother somebody else? I'm not interested. And guess what? It obeyed. Mm-hmm. Now, you remember, and I want everybody out there who has religious innovations and beliefs, I want everybody out there who understands the great truths that are within the book we know as the Bible, as well as the Quran and others. The simplicity is this. As you believe, so shall it be. Shall is all-inclusive. It also includes all the power of the Creator in what you're doing. If you had the faith or believing or understanding of the little tiny mustard seed, and you looked at that mountain and said, go jump into the sea, and didn't have any doubt that it would, it has to go jump in the sea. This is, far out. Who's going to go dumping mountains into the ocean? Hopefully not too many people. It makes big waves and causes problems for the boats. But the idea that you do have intrinsic power beyond what you know is because you are a very spiritual being. Each of us are the crown of creation. So therefore, we apparently would have much greater value, as it says in Matthew chapter 6, than some kind of bird in the field. So think about the things in terms of how it affects and what you can do and what you can use it for. Okay?
Right. Question for Drake. What is the truth about the stockpiles of stolen gold hoarded by the Japanese in World War II and is being stored on Philippine Islands? Are the cabals involved in this, and to what end?
Well, actually, that would be more of a Sunday question, but I'll answer it simply so that people know. Yeah. Quite simply, the hoards of stolen gold have been, over a period of time, secretly being returned to their rightful people of husbandry. In other words, the gold is not as such owned by anyone, but those who take care of the accounts are being reimbursed with that gold. Now, there's a reason for that. Basically, to right a wrong, and it was not the whole of the country of Japan doing these things. It was not the whole of the country of Japan who started the wars. It was not the it wasn't us or anyone else in particular who started World War I, II, III, Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan. It's not. It is a select group after specific things that will give them one of two things, either power or a boatload of money. Okay? The idea that if you had the gold, now China surrendered this gold to, Japan surrendered the gold to the Philippines because there were vaults there that had been prepared for gold that was to come. Some of that gold got stolen. Some of the gold came directly from China because China was scared. Some of the gold came from places in Europe and then got converted to other things. So you have to really know the histories of these things to fully understand them, but that's the answer to this question. Yes, things are being righted, and that was one of the reasons that China took exception to an attempt by certain portions of our military to go over and find those vaults. That was the reason for that little incursion between China and the United States. For the reason. Okay?
Right. Next question. Is it possible that there exists technology that influences us to have negative visions or dreams?
Yes, there is. there is, not only here on the planet in the hands of the bad guys, there is also off-planet in the hands of the bad ETs. And it's part of the cleanup efforts, and will be part of the cleanup efforts, is to make sure that gets removed from the planet.
That's good. Right. I have recently been made aware of a YouTube video by Anne Barnhart. Anne has a unique perspective on Islam that I'd never heard before. According to Anne, Muhammad was a sociopath who set up Islam and Sharia law as a political system to control the Arab nations. Is this a true assessment on Anne's part? And were Jesus and Muhammad ETs?
Can I hit that one?
Go for it.
I'm not going to get into the Muhammad Jesus Christ designation, and there's a reason for that. I will get into the other part. You've not got a correct outlook whenever you have something that is not to the betterment of mankind, to the preservation of the planet, etc. Just that simple. Anything outside of that is not cool. It ain't kosher, and it ain't good for us. Some of the actions taken, and you have to understand this and get this through everybody's head, it is not a great group of people doing these nasty and evil things. They are being directed or baited by only a few individuals. There was an attempt recently due to a court case where there was a very large effort made by a lot of people to bring about what I call political racism. And it came from within the administration and some so-called leaders in the black community. Those leaders have been called on the carpet by others who have the insight and understanding to actually offer definitive questions. If, and the basis of it is, if you're so worried about it, how come we're not fixing the neighborhoods? How come we're not taking care of business within our own areas? That's part of it. The second part is, why is it that people are called to hate Muslims when, if you really look at the original Muslim religion or belief system, it didn't contain originally a lot of the stuff in there. Exactly the same as what I'm trying to tell and let everybody know. I love the Bible. There's some great stories. However, you have to be able to differentiate between the fun and games stories, and yes, I said fun and game stories, and the absolute truth of presented principles. The presented principles in both books, both belief systems, are exactly what the Creator intended for us to have as an attitude, a belief system, the manner in which we conduct ourselves sociologically. Not the hate where it says that Christians are to wipe out anybody that disagrees. Well, where have you heard that before? Would that go towards infidel, as we've heard from certain people in the Muslim faith and belief system state? You got to know what the word means. An infidel is one who goes against God and everyone else at the same time. So you have to understand how this has all been politically and intentionally fostered upon the people. Now, one of the things about all belief systems, and I mean each and every last one of them, I'm not going to exclude any of them, they are all designed and written to be a control mechanism, the opiate of the people that calms them down in terms of, instead of picking up a saber to behead or fight back against somebody or a gun or something, you sit down and pray and become cannon fodder or practice dummy. I mean, people, you do not have to put up with that horse hockey. They would love for you to all lay down and play dead. I, for one, have recognized the fact that God says I have the right to self-defense. if, and only if, I'm put into a situation where there is no other answer or recourse. Think about that real close. If the correct approach is used with almost everybody, you don't have that problem. You're not going to try to see who can knock who out. You're not going to pull guns and go to blazing away. That won't happen. Why? Proactive thought says, well, okay, what are we being disagreeable about? Everything. I said, why is that? I didn't know I was disagreeable just sitting here on the bar stool. And the guy goes, well, you're in my way. I'll move over a little bit if you need some more room. That ain't no problem to me. You serious? Sure, why not? Doesn't bother me. The ideology of being able to give a little bit so that you get a lot in return, when you open somebody's mind, when you actually open intercourse, and it's called social intercourse. This is where you deal with people physically, you talk to them, etc. You reason, you listen to what they got to say, that sort of thing. That's social intercourse. When you start that, 9 times out of 10, and I'd say probably 99 out of 100, the person that was taking the obtuse direction starts thinking about, well, is that what I really want to do? 99 times out of 100, they decide that wasn't necessarily what they had in mind. I really ain't got nothing against you. I said, well, that's good. I don't know you well enough to have anything against you, so I guess that sort of evens stuff up. The aspect is not necessarily turn the other cheek love, although it is. What the aspect is to take a reasoned approach so that these obtuse things of the physical contest or the exchange of expletive deletables never happens. Where even though you're the only white person or black person on the block, the suspicion isn't there. Just that simple. How do you do that? Well, it has to be reasoned, and that's basically why we are able to think. Next.
Right. When did the overt influence by ETs end on this world? Meaning, how long ago did they stop having to face interaction with whole societies other than the Cabal, as they did with the Egyptians, Mayans, and the Aztecs?
I would say probably roughly up until that time period, probably about usually 3 to 5. Yeah, around about like 3 to 5,000 years. But I mean, the Mayans, the original Mayan people, were in existence around 400 to 500,000 years ago, and so I mean the time frames are, completely. But yeah, probably about roughly 3 to 5,000 years ago.
Cool. Question for Sunfire. There was a question of where all the water came from during Noah's flood. A couple of weeks back, the water came from the firmament. The firmament was a shield of ice surrounding Earth as a shield from a hard cosmic and sun radiations. Our ionosphere is the remnant of the firmament. My theory is that the sea levels were approximately 3,000 to 4,000 feet lower 12,500 years ago before the firmament was destroyed. Is this correct?
I would say that a good part of the floodwaters came from that. Also, the floodwaters came from the continents sinking. We had multiple continents, including that of Lumania, which was between Australia and India. Parts of Lemuria had sunk prior to that. And then, of course, we had the fall of Mu and Atlantis. And then also the reptoids came in and dropped the Mediterranean basin, causing the sinking of the Assyrian Empire. And it was a combination of the the ice shield falling and also the various continents and various parts of land falling as well that caused the amount of water and the flood, the actual flooding of the various lands. Because you think about it, a large continent like Atlantis, which spanned from off the coast of Portugal all the way down past Florida, that thing falls, it's going to create quite a tidal wave.
Yes.
And then you have something as big as big as the Assyrian Empire, that area, which is currently sitting at the bottom of the Mediterranean Ocean. That thing fell and sent water, all over the place as well. And so, it's I would say it's a combination.
Okay. Since all time and space are merely an illusion, aren't we already incarnated in 4D, 5D, or 6D? Isn't the only difference in perception for us now the veil? Do you have any suggestions, such as certain ideas, thoughts, or mantras that might assist one in more quickly thinning or completely removing the veil?
Drake, you want to take that one?
Yeah. First of all, you're in 3D if you got physical interaction on the planet. Can't help what you don't like, but that's basically it. You're not in 4D. You may be able to access parts of 4D, but that's basically your limitation. The thing that you have to understand is the lifting of the veil in terms of what we have going on presently with our existence on our 3D planet is to become aware of what goes on when you move into and start moving towards 4D. Now, I've heard a lot of people, I got lucid dreams. I saw this. I feel that. I never felt this before. How is it I know what's going to happen before it happens? And all these questions go to one thing. We are going to go through, quite literally, a transition from our present physically oriented selves to a more spiritual orientation. That process has not taken place yet. Most people that I'm aware of, and I mean almost all of them, have no clue as to how to get there. You raise the veil and somebody will have already put another one in place beyond it. You're not going to get there from here except through the transition. Now, the approach of the transition itself will make changes in you on a better connective basis between your spiritual self and your physical self here. This doesn't have anything to do with your intellect at this point, but you're going to experience things that you can't explain. Our physical science does not have the capability. Okay, so what are you looking at? You're looking at being prepared. Those who have not felt anything yet, you will eventually. Everybody progresses at their own rate, so therefore some will have already experienced some things, some haven't felt nothing, and they're going, so what? And I understand that. When you experience things personally, you wonder about it. What happens 3 or 4 times and it's the same thing and it's accurate, you go, that's far out. I didn't know that was possible. And you don't even recognize, usually, what it is, its importance, let alone how to use it. So you got to look at this as a progressive project in terms of the creation, trying to get enough people together to come up to the understanding that there might be a whole lot more to things than what it appears. If I remember in The Karate Kid, things are not as they seem. Well, guess what? You are not as you seem either. And the conditions in which you exist also are very much different than anything that you have ever run across. This is a totally new big step for most people. So the preparations, the ideologies, the getting ready is basically where these things revolve around. This is the fulcrum of a long lever. You're going to pry up a real heavy weight, you need a long stick. Very simple. Some people's awareness takes a longer stick than others. some people, and until we start really approaching this and actually offering definitive information as we're told to do so, there will be a lot of things that people will not find in terms of direct, specific answers. But know two things. The ideology is that, as our Creator says in all these textbooks, whether they like it or not, they screwed up and put it in there, that God wants the best for His children. That the Creator has in mind a golden age. That we are not only to participate, but be a full-fledged member of the group called to go experience it and enjoy it. It is up to the individual to make their mind up whether or not they would rather hold on to what we have now, and I'm talking about all the nice physical ailments and getting old and things hurt and stuff sags and it don't work quite right and all that, or being totally healed of those things. Not to be subject any longer of by the genetic manipulation done by the bad guys when they crashed our party and screwed things up thoroughly. And this continues today. The bad thoughts, the idea of hurting somebody because they said something that you didn't particularly appreciate, and all that, okay, you need to wean yourself off of that. You need to come to the realization that you are more than that situation says. And did that person really mean it that way, or was it some kind of joke that was a little on the sick side? Is that the only way that person has to express themselves? There's a lot of questioning of why you think so. Then when that happens, when you get in a situation, the proactivity comes in and you go, yeah, right, I sure wish things would get better. I'm tired of having to buy more toilet paper because of the problems. I mean, it's real simple. Okay?
Next question is also about the veil. Isn't the veil actually our ego, or is it space-time? David Wilcock often spoken of the shift as going from space-time to time-space. Is this correct, or do you have a better way of expressing what the shift is?
Ah, boy. You want me to take that one too, Sunfire?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Seeing as how you asked, I'll get real specific. Space-time is the continuum in which we presently find ourselves deployed. You're standing on it. You're involved directly in it, and you are a part of it. Like it or not, you're stuck. Okay, so then the fun begins. You want to try to understand what the differential will be between what we have now and what we have then. Okay, try this. In one of the age-old movies called Dune, they cover a thing called spice. This is supposedly a chemical element, and we have one very, very, very similar to what it says that does right here on the planet. Oh, boy. And it's not well known, so I won't go into it. But it's cool. Here's why it's cool. You have the capability, and this has happened many times with people who know what they're doing with it. In other words, it's very similar to a really physical acid trip, in that reality tends to meld or melt together, that your reference to a place may change. They have had people experiencing this particular inducement and move from one place to another. It's called teleportation. They didn't do so knowledgeably. It just happened. It's not a real common occurrence, but it's not all that uncommon in terms of that. What people have to understand is that as you bend reality and fold time into itself, time becomes a quanta. And it's not a measurable, effective quanta. It is an immeasurable infinity of a specific existence that is predicated on the idea that a certain distance equals a certain time. It takes me a half hour to go to work. Oh, well, how far is that? Whoops. See how that works? We're already doing it. Where time has become critical in terms of a distance. So we have already transpositioned time and space. Space being distance or existence in a specific place, and time being what it takes to navigate that space or distance. Not difficult. Our modern physics does not have the calculation capability to actually get into the idea that time may not have a relativity. Now, this is really going to screw people's minds up, and I hope there's some people out there who are mathematicians. What happens when time does not have relativity? Well, that means that space and space only. Well, yes, but what does that do? What that means is that you are looking for the definition of the infinite. Each time you find a definition, it continues. And it continues forever. You can get lost in the infinity of numbers. You can get lost in the infinity of philosophy. You can get lost in the infinity of application of belief systems. It is a combination of things that very few people can comprehend in a literal manner. You hear stories. God did this. Things like this happened. Well, that goes to what the capability of operating within creation is. That goes to the capability of the effect that it had at that particular point in time. In time? What time? Who knows what time it is? And there was a song about that. I believe Chicago or somebody did that. Does anybody really know what time it is? No. Why? Somebody screwed the clock up a long time ago, and nobody has ever bothered to reset it. Well, we got an atomic clock that keeps time, but what's the relativity of that? How does that actually work? And what is its impact in terms of the individual? Does time actually have a bearing on what you do? Not really. Is it able to be messed with? Well, of course. You remember something happened yesterday? You just went back in time. So the relativity only goes to space. And when you start folding these things in on each other and together, you find that a distance no longer is there. You find yourself, as you get a clear picture of where you're going, you are there. So therefore, distance, space, and the time or the duration of the journey is non-extant. In other words, you have a supposed mathematical truth. 1 minus 1 equals 0. That's supposed to be a truth or a true statement. What you just found out was that you're simply moving back and forth on either side of the equals sign in that equation, and you found the infinity represented by a circle. And you're going round and round. Where is the beginning point on a circle? Ain't one. So figure it from there.
Who were the ETEDs at the Phoenix Lights in March 1997?
The original ones in the late 90s, that would have been a fleet of Rigelians that had lost their cloaking abilities because they got their butts kicked by the positives. I don't remember who kicked their butts exactly, but I know that was why they actually showed up.
Cool.
They had their cloaking devices knocked out.
Right, next question. Is our sun part of a binary star system? If so, how often does Nemesis return? Is it every 26 million or 63 million years or some other period?
Okay, first off, Nemesis is not a problem, not a threat, anything like that. Another one of those myths like Nibiru and Planet X and all those other fun things. Aside from that, the system is a binary system, and originally it was a trinary system, but currently it's binary. And the reason why we cannot see the second sun from Earth is because the last time that the planet was moved around 14,500 years ago by the Alcyons in around that time, and it was done because the Earth's atmosphere does not have enough of a ability to protect the surface from the onslaught of the radiation of two suns, but it is visible from Mars.
Cool. Question for Drake. Are you familiar with the videos and teachings by Bill Donahue? He teaches that we create reality out of photons and that our DNA acts like an antenna to collect and construct our bodies from light. Of course, Tanath and Sunfire, please contribute.
I think I'll leave this one completely to Drake.
Yes and no. What has to be understood here is that, as I stated, trinary is a perfect number, 3, in a balanced expression of it. So therefore, you have to have a trinary in order to have what's called completion. In other words, if you take a triangle, 3 lines, all 3 equal, and you remove one of them, you got much of anything. The same thing is true of man. We have had 2 helical strands of DNA since the reptoids ripped the other one out. Now, I'm going to say basically 3. There are auxiliary strands that will be reinitiated. However, we are also all in the process of reacquiring, reinitiating, and re-implementing our 3rd DNA strand. Okay. At present, we can only protect ourselves through energy fields to a limited extent. This is why you get sunburned. This is the other reason that certain skin anomalies, such as cancers and things like that, formulate. It's not because we're doing something intrinsically wrong as such per se. Going out in the sun does not cause skin cancer, contrary to popular belief. You get sunburnt, that's about it. Now, one thing that I'm going to caution everybody about that does cause skin cancer is a lot of these sunblocks that people say block the sun. They concentrate it. If you take a look, and you have to do this with an electron microscope, at any of the sunblocks applied to the skin, you will find energy vortexes forming whose focal length is the surface of your skin, thus creating a great concentration of the good and bad parts of the sun into a very small area. It's too high a level for our skin to handle. You get a sunburn. In most cases, you don't get skin cancer. In a lot of cases, you do. And that is one of the direct causes. There are natural formulations for skin block that are all out on the market that do work and do the job well. I will suggest that people look at things not as something that they are doing wrong by going out in the sun, but rather, as we have been lied to and stolen from, so does this come about. The closer we get to the transition, the better you will be, physically and spiritually. You will find that you don't tend to get sunburnt so easily. You get tan maybe, but you won't get sunburnt. You'll find that people who have had problems with being in the sun, that doctors will tell you it causes cancer, will decrease, not increase, but decrease. There, within the holistic community, a great many formulations that cure cancer. And I use the word cure. It doesn't have any side effects. You don't have the chemotherapy horse hockey to deal with. You simply apply this stuff to your skin, and it works. Pretty simple. you also can internalize certain portions of these same formulations to make sure that you ain't got nothing funky going on inside. Now, you got to remember, you're dealing with what you can see and what you can feel in terms of radiation. Radiation does not necessarily create a physical sensation when you get zapped with it. And I have been around atomic energy, and I can tell you, you don't feel it necessarily. Some people are sensitive, such as myself, and even a light bulb I can feel the radiation from at a distance of 10, 12 feet. So, you know, those who would want to understand there's a lot of physics involved, but it's not real complicated stuff either. So there's your explanation. Next.
Next question. Any grey races benevolent, and if so, which ones?
There aren't any that are benevolent. They're not even like any that are sentient or conscious. They're basically parasites that walk around and cause all kinds of destruction and do bad things. So no, there aren't any benevolent gray races.
We are told that we'll be given the choice to stay 3D or transcend into 4. What are the specific benefits of each based on the information which will be shared with us? What is 3D or 4D pros and cons?
I think there's pros and cons in each one. For those that stay 3D, I know that their health will be fully restored. They will be, as much as those even going 4D, they will be given, full information of what's happened here on Terra, the complete history. Their lifespan will be expanded to between 1,000 and 1,500 years. They will be transported to a pristine virgin planet and given tools and different abilities to and technology and stuff to continue living in 3D on that planet. And or for those that want to go to 4D, a lot of the benefits, the positive stuff, and all the other different details are available on TolexAndromedacouncil.com website. He has basically everything down to the difference in the molecules of a 4D being versus a 3D being. And people that go to 4D, they will be living roughly between 10,000 to 15,000 years. And I mean, there's benefits and cons, pros and cons to, either one. It's a matter of choosing what you are ready for. Are you ready to transition on to 4D, or do you want to stay in 3D? It's not going to be like what you guys have been experiencing here on this planet. This is not typical 3D. Drake, do you want to add to that?
I thought you covered it pretty well. The basis in terms of difference is that everybody will be taught the absolute truth. This does not come from us. It does not come from higher dimensional ETs. This comes directly from Source. Now, Source, everybody considers that God. Everybody considers this to be the ultimate, etc. The ideology of full and absolute love for everybody is available. Mm-hmm. What do we got to do to get there? Oh, boy, do we got some changes to go through. As I said, all the prejudices and all that stuff's got to go. Now, number 2, and this is the fun part, I do not hold anything against anybody for actions they feel necessary to take in terms of them not personally attempting to damage me, no matter who it is. However, there are some entities who are totally evil. You can't deal with those, so what happens is that they are restrained and sent back to be counseled, reconditioned, rehabilitated, if possible. Some are way past the point of no return, and they will not be returning as we are familiar with them in any way, shape, or form. Parts of the things that are involved in what we are going to be able to experience are going to be a simple matter of choice. When someone meets an angel, what do you experience? First thing a true angel says is, be not afraid. You don't need to be afraid of me. The rest of it has been left out conveniently. That angel will say to you that you can be equal to them, and that we are in a position, and this includes myself, I'm rather advanced in some ways. I will not as such specifically lead one way or the other, nor will I follow for some of the same reasons. However, we can walk side by side as friends, associates, companions, and actually bring about all these changes that people have been hungering for since forever. And that's basically what I'm looking forward to. Plus, we get all these fun gadgets to play with when we get there.
That's something I'm looking forward to, as well as all the holodecks and the adventures and the travel and all that other stuff. And one thing I wanted to add is that, for those that choose to transition to 4D, you will have the ability to, at any point in time you want, go back to 3D and manifest yourself in physical 3D to, spend any length of time in physical 3D that you want to. So even if you transition, to the higher dimensions, you can still come into 3D. You're not limited to once you transition to 4D that you're stuck there. There's many, higher dimensional beings that come in and they'll visit, various 3D planets. They'll interact with friends, or they'll interact with family members, or, they'll visit the planet just because it's a beautiful planet. And, so that's something that people need to also keep in mind, that you're not limited once you go to 4D.
Right. Why aren't those of us who are awake and aware and ready to help being contacted and taught to help the masses when needed?
I think a lot of people are being contacted during their sleep time, and a lot of people, beyond what they're aware of, are being helpful in the sleep time. As far as being contacted in physical 3D, at this point, it's not physically feasible. As soon as landings are possible, then, and at that point, I know that a lot of those that are ready are going to be, be contacted, and they're going to be provided for training and all that other stuff, because it's not just a matter of, I'm ready, I pick up a sword, I'm going to go chop some Draco's head off. It doesn't quite work like that. People, before they're going to go up against a Draco, they need to get training. They need to, learn how to handle something like that. And right now, the positive ETs are not able to land, and so, it's not possible for them to really be making contact on a mass scale at this point. But as soon as they can, they will. Drake, you want to add to that?
I would suggest that due to recent events, in terms of a whole bunch of things that I'm privileged to that I cannot talk about a lot, I would suggest that we are, light years closer to actually coming together in terms of our long-lost brothers and sisters, and this is something else that's kind of fun, and us being able to sit on the porch, have a beer, and discuss things. The reality difference is not as much as people might think. The sense of humor that I've found with most of the ETs is just as relative as ours. They take some of the stuff we do as totally ridiculously funny.
Oh, yeah.
Think about something that is much higher in intelligence in terms of activities and condition of existence. And imagine a tour bus. Why don't they want you to be down here? Well, it might be contagious. Look at those people. Look at that one over there. What he's doing. And look at the, and it just goes on and on and on. So you have to understand two things. Just because the reasoning is similar to Spock on Star Trek does not mean that Spock was without a sense of humor. If you watch very closely the interaction between Doc McCoy and Spock, you're going to see some sense of humor that is just fantastic and also very real. So, and the most amiable, caring entities that I've ever run across. So, and I work with these people whenever requested. I get things to do a lot, and so I just, as I said, I'm looking like a kid in a candy store at all the goodies and going, wow, this is going to be fun. Think about the ability to instead of jumping in the Chevy, you jump into the ET machine and go tooling about the universe. Good grief, think about the fun and games. Look at Star Trek and think about, okay, we're going to explore and try to introduce ourselves if it's not going to be interference with whatever's going on. Good grief. I mean, how far can you go? What can you accomplish? Who all can you meet? Well, you got to have training. You really do. You have to understand how things work. You have to understand that this is a combination of mental, physical, and spiritual training. You do have to know how to handle a sword. You also have to know how to hold out an olive branch and say, well, you might be different, but you're all right with me, and actually not have any reservation about it.
Yeah.
Just the same as you would with a person or whomever you would actually hook up with on the combination of spiritual and emotional being, and actually totally, without reservation, share yourself with that other individual. This is where it's at. It is not in all this strife and suffering and the horse hockey that we got going on the planet. These wars are BS. They're all perpetrated by people with an agenda. What do they want? Well, they stole the gold out of a certain country that's having a civil war presently. You've got the fun and games of we're doing something. And yet they go outside our country, these politicians and people that supposedly have the power, and they don't address the fact that the seasonally adjusted numbers for unemployment are 180, 200,000 higher. They don't address the fact that we have a serious monetary problem here just within our own country, and they refuse to address it. They refuse to acknowledge it. They refuse to allow it to come into the mainstream media. Well, they don't want us to know. Why? Well, you keep somebody in the dark and they don't know what's going on, they're easier to control and manipulate and cause to do things. And you end up with people in Syria fighting each other, and they may be related. Then all of a sudden, the fighters change. Huh? What happened here? What do you mean? Well, you got people from outside the country coming in, fully armed, ready to go. That ain't right. You've got problems in terms of people not being prepared correctly in terms of a change in administration. This happened recently in Egypt. Now, there's two problems there. One is that you have the absolute of a belief system being forced upon people who say no. The political fallout is tremendous. Then think about somebody coming along, such as Mr. Keenan, with his, hey, we're going to set the planet free. How about that? Okay, cool. And everybody was expecting it to be tomorrow, next week. Oh, boy. 2 weeks or sooner, I kept saying. Well, I'm finding that I'm not going to worry about time frames, but more what's actually going on. And I do talk to Neil regularly, and I do know what's going on. It's not for public consumption yet. When it is, believe me, it's going to be blasted like you would not believe. So you have to look at that. You have to look at the ET situation. You have to look at the freedom of the planet being a critical point, specifically in the United States. Why? It is one of the freest countries and has been in terms of its basis, its structure, since it started. Yeah, we got some problems and we got to deal with them. There's going to be a load of house cleaning. However, look at what would transpire after that. you have some 180, give or take, unaligned nations. That means they're not a part of the, quote, G20, European Union, American Central Banking System, etc. They stand outside of themselves, and they have cut off, along with the people who are in charge of the collateral accounts, the availability of acquiring more material to cause more strife and suffering, and etc. So things are happening. People have to recognize, people have to look. They're not as such ready to come to, a strict point of explosion here quite yet. But it's coming. It's going to come for the whole planet as we, as individuals, learn to not worry about somebody that would be referred to as a gook. That's a Vietnamese. A slope. That's a Korean. I mean, quit it. Hi, man, how you doing? And no, there is no race on the planet that all looks alike. I don't care who you might lay that one on. Now, we have certain things that need to be changed. Totally. That each individual is sovereign, that each individual has certain unalienable rights, freedom of will to make choices of their own, not to be dictated to by others, belief systems, or whatever. It doesn't work that way. So as we begin to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and forget the BS that everybody's trying to feed us from up above, and I mean our present administration, I mean the whole thing just about, this is true. Other countries, the people are lied to a lot. We're in fine shape when they're broke. The idea that we have to have finance is bogus. They've been trading beans and goat meat in the Middle East for thousands of years without problems. So who manufactures problems? The government. Who starts wars? The government. Who gets to be the cannon fodder? This is the question. Do you really think that you should be a participant in somebody else's agenda when they actually throw you out there to be sacrificed just because? Or do you think that you might serve yourself and everybody else better by becoming the sovereign person you know to be and say, no, Mr. Custer, I ain't going? And a lot of this is taking place in a lot of militaries all over the planet. I ain't going to go do that. That is not right. And as this begins to take hold and become the norm, then the differential between different races of people goes away. Why? Because somebody ain't saying you got to hate black people because they're black, or black people saying you got to hate white people because they're white. You don't have that trouble no more. It's gone. And there ain't no reason for it except that somebody stuck the idea in somebody's head. And basically, everybody, and I mean every last individual that can stand and do something. It don't matter what your age is, etc. But what matters is you take a definitively positive aspect and run with it. And you'll find that when you start being positive, the dark clouds clear away. It quits raining, and the sun comes out, and the flowers open up and smile at you, and things are right, no matter whom you are. But it's really fun to be able to share something like that with another person that's supposed to be so different you can't get along with. And that's, to me, what's the critical point here. We need to go from being subject to becoming the sovereign people so that we can set ourselves free, so that the military knows they can trust the population here in the United States, so that ET can land. It will help them get there, so that we can start meeting these people. And wow, the fun begins, and it's not that far away, and it's not difficult to do. And that's my answer. And I'm sticking to it.
I wanted to add something, and it kind of ties back into things we were talking about earlier. Space, time, and thought are not the separate things they appear to be. There's something to consider, people. And also, in relation to answering this question, start thinking about what you want to do when the opportunity is presented to you to help out and be a part of this freedom movement, and start thinking about what you want to do. Do you want to be one of the diplomats, or do you want to go and help out on one of the ships, or do you want to, what do you want to do? Start thinking about that, because another thing is thought is the basis of all reality, and so the more you think about what you want to do and define it and be as precise as possible, that starts drawing that reality to you.
Cool. Right, the next two questions are about somebody who likes to multitask. Can or will I be able to take part in more than one organisation, i.e. the member of the Joint Earth Council and or Silver Legion?
Generally speaking, well, first off, you have to say Silver Legion is an independent member of the Federation, and there's quite often that joint operations are done together between the Silver Legion, Federation, and, any of the other various member aspects. But generally speaking, what is done is, whichever one you are a member of, you tend to, have enough going on in your life and in your assignments, your missions, that you're very busy, but there are joint operations that take place. So it's kind of like, you're still a member of the Federation, or you're still a member of, this group or that group. You're still you're still involved in Federation operations and that kind of thing. You still get to be, you can still be an you can still be a pilot, and you can be a xenoanthropologist, and you can do something else as well. There's not any limitations in what people are going to be able to do and what they are capable of doing, except for the limitations that they set on themselves.
Right.
Yep.
When Terrans join Silver Legion, can we hold the position of a pilot, light combatant, and a light healer at the same time? And will training be given as such?
Yes, you guys, it kind of ties back into my last answer. People can have more than just one job, or more than just one purpose, one thing that they do, and any training for anything that anybody wants to learn, any books, anything like that. If you want to learn it, there's somebody or some information that will help you learn that.
Right. As a very awake person, I'm trying to piece together this timeline. If we are headed into a world collapse with the loss of much soul separation, are we going to be able to handle an ascension while trying to survive the onslaught on this planet? Or will the outside cousins help before then?
I don't think there's going to be any mass casualty events or mass catastrophic events to be concerned about. Nobody that I know of, upstairs or down here sees any of that coming, and the majority of it, I'd say 99%, is just fear porn, and I wouldn't be too concerned about it. And our space cousins are already helping us, and they're intending to very shortly start helping us more actively as soon as it's physically possible for them to do it.
Good. I am noticing things different about music. It's causing triggers, sections of notes, lyrics seem to stick in the head and causing strong emotions and memories clearing. Is there a power to music that we are not aware of that is a triggering effect on our psyches?
I think so, yes, very much. Drake, you want to add to that? I think you could probably get more into the science of it than I can.
Okay, each individual has what's called a brainwave pattern. There are base portions of that brainwave pattern that are attuned to vibration specifically. In other words, you're sitting there buzzing along kind of, okay? What happens is that music picks up and attaches itself, so to speak, to certain of your expressive capabilities of your vibration. What it does is that when you listen to certain types of music, and I prefer classics because it doesn't hurt my head, it does not cause me indigestion, among other things. I also like certain classical rock and roll because it beats it out, pounds it out, and says so without remorse. Just as the classics also can show you how it would feel and sound when a flower opens. So the problems that people have with correlating these two is very simple. You have lost the capability that you had when you were a child, known as imagination. You wonder why a child's attention span might be short? Because their imagination is going at the speed of light. And because they see everything totally differently. Because they have not been told you have to orient themselves to the idea of a cardboard box, which becomes a spaceship, or the armor for the robot that just became, or a hiding place up in the woods somewhere, and all of the great things that come about from that exact imagination. Suffer not the little children to come unto me, for these are of heaven. Remember I said principle. You have to really be able to define it and fetter it out. It says, you should be a workman who needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. First you got a word of truth. Then you have to find how it is specifically stated. Through the eyes of a child we shall see. That's Moody Blues. They understood. That's why everybody followed them. That's why they were such a hit. Not because they reached out necessarily and plucked heartstrings, but because they played with your imagination just a bit. Look at the covers of some of their albums. Think about what they have intonated in terms of their music. Then if you take it and electrify it, you get Pink Floyd. Woohoo, yeah. You get artists in every artistic representation who have something to say. They're far and few between, but they really have something to say. Tupac Shakur was one of them. Hey, man, you can be lying in the chalk just like me. No more valuable than a dead bee. Now, it didn't say nothing about color. He said anybody, everybody. So you have to understand that there is, yes, a sense of loss when somebody dies, but what happened to them? They went to the next deed. How do I know? My father just passed, and I had a nice little conversation with him. He's just happier than a kid in a candy store. All of the fun and games that's going on up there was just exactly what he was hoping for. All the pain, strife, tribulations, and BS has quit, and he's just woohoo. Just as I'm going to be, I'm sure, and all of it, and most of us that decide to go are going to go, wow, man, really? And somebody's going to be standing there going, yup. Now, here's how you pilot a starship. Oh, boy. What is your imagination limit, and why is it limited? You can go into poetry, you can go into song, you can go into vibration, you go into light. All of these are forms of expression that can be totally awesome. You've seen a light show, a laser light show. Have you ever seen the combination of a true laser and light show? Probably not, because 3D is difficult when you get into a simple air. But holographically can be produced if done correctly. I'm waiting to see the next really great innovations in science fiction movies. I love a simple cartoon. How to Train Your Dragon? Oh, my goodness. What imagination can you find in that? Then you got something like Avatar, where they take a human being and put them into an artificially grown or produced entity, and that entity actually accepts them totally. They actually transmute between our simple physical body and that of an avatar. What is an avatar? Okay, yeah, look it up. Watch that movie closely. It's got a lot of principle. It's like the chocolate factory, a lot of principle. Dennis the Menace was pretty cool too. It's something that causes your mind to start expanding. Something that causes a light bulb to go on, and you go, cool. I wonder what would happen if we adjusted the color of the light. Woo, and off down the road you go. It's just that simple. Next.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. Like we've said multiple times, guys, go out and watch the Star Trek episodes, watch the Star Trek series, watch the movies. Not so much the most recent two movies, because reimagination is a totally different thing, but the original Gene Roddenberry Star Trek franchise, 95% of it is based on facts and real information. You can learn a lot.
Astronomers have discovered a gas cloud being ripped apart by the massive black hole at the center of our galaxy. Will this have an effect upon our solar system?
Drake?
No, not right away. And you have to understand that there's efforts being made to reinitiate the balance that was lost when it was screwed with. It's similar to our planet. It's got a wobble. Whoops, somebody screwed up. Things like that are going to be fixed. It is not going to be something that's going to be very easy, and it is not something that translates, and this is something everybody's got to get their head around. When you take something that's several million years in advance of you in physics, think about trying to translate that, mother, into regular everyday English or any of our theoretical math. It just don't work. So, yes, and no, it shouldn't have an effect as such per se. We are probably going to be some of the people dealing with it even. So, think about that in that aspect, okay?
Good. Will there be a need for cultural liaisons between the people of Earth and other ET races?
Of course. That's, kind of part of what those like Tanath and Drake and me and many others around the planet are doing now. And, of course, there's going to be a need for cultural liaisons between not only Terrans and other extraterrestrial off-world races and beings, but in the future there will also be a need for, there still is and has been all along, a need for cultural liaisons and diplomats and ambassadors and that sort of thing. I know multiple different ambassadors and liaisons, and there's always a need for them, and there always will be.
You want to have some fun with that question? I'm going to hit you on the head with it. I see my wife making Jell-O, and I said, "What flavor is it?" And she looked at me without any hesitation and said, "Red." Now, you guys think about that, okay?
Okay. As babies can be manifested without the physical act, will sperm even be required in 4D?
Yeah, but it takes on a whole different matter base, because there's still people that conceive the natural way. So yeah.
Okay. How would one raise themselves into 4D by themselves?
Drake. All I know is it has to do with the speeding up of the molecular matter and structure of your body, and
Aha. Okay, a real simple answer is contained within what I just said. What flavor is it? Red. Okay, that connotes light, color. Okay, all matter is solid light. People got to get their head around that one. That's going to be a fun one to deal with because it's ancient knowledge. The fun begins when you understand the difference between 3 and 4D. The fun begins further when you start understanding what is required of you as an individual to be able to transcend what are known as the veils, and there's several of them. One of them is perceptual, and they're all combined together now, so, bear with me on this. One is perceptual. You can't see through it. It's opaque. Looks like a big blur without shape or color on the other side. You might get a little bit of a light spot here and there, maybe, if you're really good at looking. However, then there's the other part. The physical manifestation between 3 and 4 is an extraordinary change. In other words, you're going to have to combine yourself totally and completely. And this is the difficult part. And if you really want to do it, up to you. You have to totally and completely combine your spiritual self with your physical self in order to accomplish the goal of raising your dimensionality, in other words, the manner in which you occupy space and have weight, to that which is spiritually oriented. Now, think about this very carefully, instead of physically oriented. In other words, you have to be able to change yourself to the extent that it is no longer an issue. You have to understand that Einstein's equation, in that E equals mc squared, each and every last thing in there is a variable. Some of the items listed actually equate to each other and are actually a unity representation. You have to look at E equals mc squared. You've got two lights and energy. There's your trinary. Didn't think about that, did you? There's your trinary. Now, build a triangle out of the speed of light squared and energy, and step through it. That would be a good representation of a portal made by an individual. You also, and this is the fun part, can't leave the door open. You got to take that little triangle with you. Then you have to be able to initiate it from the other side. I will say that it's easier to go from 4 to 3 than it is from 3 to 4. So, there you go.
Question. Drake, you said people would remember about them being incarnates. How close are we to that moment?
Can you say that a little louder, Tom?
You said people would remember about being incarnates themselves. How close are we to knowing?
We're a lot closer than people think. However, you have to remember, not all incarnates are awake. Not all incarnates are aware enough to come to that realization. And there's a whole bunch of other things that go with it that I won't discuss at this point, but would be better presented in terms of the classes that everybody's going to get to attend in order to grasp the understanding. When you get the fundamentals down and you then can combine them, and you have 3 classes, standard, initiate, and advanced, okay? When you get to the advanced class, it actually tells you how to correlate these things. In other words, those in 4D can actually maybe access 5 if, and there's a lot of ifs in this, they personally know that they can. They are able to. Okay, that's the other part. And 3 won't do any harm by doing so. Those are the base qualifications that I've been able to find so far. There are more. I won't go into them because you're getting into an area called cosmic law, and that gets convoluted. So I'll leave it at that, okay?
Great. Where can I find information on the legend of the White Dragon?
you have to get into ancient Chinese legends and mythology in order to find that. Then you have to be able to go to India and find their correlation. And then, and this really gets to be fun, you have to understand that dragons have been up until, let's see, the last picture I got of a living one was 94. This is a real, honest-to-God, living dragon flying through the sky kind of thing. Not play games, not some kind of hoax. There used to be multiple on this planet at one point. Now, that's not exactly how it was supposed to be. It was not exactly intended to come out that way, but with a little help from off-world entities that did not have our best interest in mind, we ended up with a race of dragons here. Now, they were not exactly nice, and you got to understand, not each and every last one of those is, but white dragon is the symbology of the, quote, righteous. You have to really get back into some deep thought. You will find that the Vatican holds a great deal of this knowledge, and yet you'll also find some of the elders in China and India also are well schooled in this. When you begin to find the high mountain retreats of the monks and gain access to audience, then you will find that a lot of the questions you may have will be readily answered. It took me several years to acquire that audience, just that alone. I was told on varying occasions, and the door was slammed shut in my face, learn to ask a question. Learn to ask it properly. You name it, and I screwed it up. Didn't know I was. But an initiate does that. An adept does better. They can actually have some knowledge base. It's the advanced that you need to concentrate on. So you start out with a simple question. You redefine it so that it makes better sense in terms of the answer that you're striving for. And then you expertise it or become advanced with it. About the same time you're able to ask the question, you'll know some of the answer. However, the white dragon is supposed to be the good. The red dragon is supposed to be the evil. They're supposed to have a great battle in the sky for all of Terra, all of Earth, and all of mankind. And whether this is actually going to take place or not is still a little up in the air. We'll see. Okay?
Are governments in South America working with benevolent ETs?
I don't think that there are any benevolent ETs that are really working with many, if any, governments right now directly, because none of the governments truly represent the people, and the benevolent ETs are more focused on the people than they are on the government, and they want to reach out to the people, not the governments.
Okay. Drake, if you are
Yes.
able to say, when you were going on missions with the Silver Legion, what form do you choose to take? Or are you able to explain?
I take a variety of forms. I appear as an archangel. I appear as a dragon. I appear partially as both. I appear as just old me. It varies according to what feels needed to be put out according to what I'm doing. Sometimes you don't see me at all. The variation is that far. So what you've got in terms of reality is something that a combination of imagination takes over. I could appear to someone in many forms. So, just appearing to somebody in a form basically doesn't have the import that a lot of people would think it does. And yet, in some cases, it's very important to one's enemies or those whom you might be looking at to see whether or not you have to have a physical contest with them or spiritual or energy or whatever it may be. So, it varies, okay?
I think you described yourself as a muscly grunt last time. I think that was why they were asking the question. Kanath mentioned magic and also psionics on the last show. After talking about the Lord of the Rings and the Harry Potter magic versions, what are the differences, if any, between magic and psionic abilities?
Well, magic is a manipulation of energy and psionics. Magic is one form of energy manipulation. Psionics is another. Psionics uses the mind. And with magic, there's multiple other elements involved. But Drake will probably be able to give a better answer because he's more familiar with the magic aspects than I am. Drake?
Yeah, okay, I see how you are.
I just love doing this to you.
Okay, well, basically, it goes back to what I was teaching about the Matrix in terms of our being an integral part of it. It goes back to the capability of man thinking that if he uses a certain ritual, does things in a certain way, he accomplishes certain goals and certain points. Reason being is other people say so. Well, I'm going to tell people to quit taking everybody else's word for it. Magic is very interesting in that it has no limitation that I am aware of. It is left up to the application of the imagination of the individual as to whatever they might want to come out with, meaning that you can become a dragon or whatever. You can have things happen. As I stated before, what magic does is it supposedly brings in auxiliary and extra energies involved in making something come about, whether that's the manner of presentation, an astral projection where you send an image of yourself to see somebody, as well as touching on, not totally and completely involved with, but touching on certain spiritual aspects that others don't think even exist. You can, depending on your application and your knowledge, do all the things that you see in Sorcerer's Apprentice. That was an interesting movie, but also very, very real. That is a magic aspect of application of the Matrix. In short, you bring about to bear all of the powers of the balances within the Matrix. In other words, there are limitations. You tilt it too far one way, and the power of balance tilts it back to where it should be. So this is why people don't necessarily get ate up by whatever dragon might come out of a guy's belly button, as it did in that movie, etc. You can actually endow things with physical capabilities that it should not have. I remember a great big steel bird that was flying around that these guys were riding on. As I say, you have to understand absolutely that it's your imaginary limitation. It's the limit you place on yourself is the reasons that you can or cannot do what you're looking at. So, it's not difficult, and I'll leave it at that, okay?
If the awakened population of the planet directly request as a group for direct intervention by removing negative off-world forces from this planet so we can clean up the rest, how many people would be required to make that effect?
Well, for one, we already back many years ago, we reached the 10% requirement for the direct intervention, and the ETs have been intervening. What would make the greatest effect is if billion people worldwide became enlightened and became awake and aware, that would change things overnight, like in the blink of an eye. The ET have been intervening. They have been taking care of a lot of things. But people need to understand they're not saviors. They're not gods. They're not going to do this for you. They will assist. They will guide. They will mentor. They will help. But it's also up to the Terran population to get involved and start doing a lot of this on their own. They need to start getting more involved with their community. They need to start helping others and really, making the changes and being the change that they are expecting and that they're looking for. They need to be that change. They need to take back their own power and step into that power and use it for positive results and for positive pursuits.
Okay.
Next.
Is it safe to be riding in an aeroplane in the air during the time of the shift from 3D to 4D?
Yes.
Well, I have heard a bunch of things about that too. I've heard that a lot of people are going to be requested to remain on the planet, not to go flying or things of that nature. Whether or not that is going to be something that's requested won't be known until such time as it is time for that transition. That's
right.
what I'm hearing. So.
Yeah, but as far as I understand it, flying using cars, using methods of transportation, as far as I understand it, it'll be perfectly safe to be using transportation methods during the transition. If not, I'm certain that the ET will be informing us otherwise prior to that.
Okay. Next question.
In short, you're not going to lose your mind in the process.
Right.
No. Tanaf previously mentioned that in our 4D, our muscles will atrophy at a much slower pace than here in 3D. Can we therefore still train and get really buffed in 4D?
Yes, for those that want to, they can. It's not necessary. From what I understand, the whole concept of getting really buff and really muscular is out of vanity and out of this concept that it's healthy and that there's an actual necessity for it beyond vanity. There isn't. And so, but for people that still want to pursue such a thing, certainly if they want to, they can.
Okay. I know other questions have touched on this topic, but there is something I'm missing. From our perspective, what is the difference between dying and going to 4D versus ascending and going to 4D? And will the people who died be spirits who can be projected into the fourth dimension?
For those that have already previously passed over, as I think Drake kind of touched on that already a little bit, and I know it's been touched on before, they already exist either in 40, 5D, 60, whatever dimension they originated from, or they exist as a physical being in the astral and ethereal realms. And the difference between ascending with a planet and going into 4D and then dying and going into 4D is when the planet ascends and a population ascends with the planet, it doesn't require the physical death of the body to ascend with the planet. You just transition. It's like you go through this matter change. With those that physically die, their body dies, but their soul, their spirit essence still remains alive and goes into the next dimension. And then when the planet, fully manifests there, then, they either return to the planet or they go on to a different planet or a different dimension. So, there's a lot of differences, but there's the simple answer of it anyway.
Okay. Do you think the societal structure of the Iaga people, as described in Stevenson's book, a good role model for our Earth society to duplicate?
I think it's a good example of one of the possibilities, one of the potential ones. But what it comes down to is Terrans need to come together and collectively decide how they want to do it. How do they want to structure this? How do they want to structure their societies, their cities, their countries, their continents? How do they want to structure it? What is going to be the best for them? And I think the Iargans are a good example of one potential. There are multiple different potential different structural approaches. I know that the Federation and the Silver Legion and some of the others are going to be presenting the entire planet with different structural options. From there, look at all the options and decide what's going to work best for them here on Terra.
Are the Iargans part of the Federation?
Yes, they are. They're wonderful people. They're very positive, and they've actually we really like them, and they've been really instrumental in helping out not only here on the surface but also up in space. They're
Okay. Could you explain your understanding of the higher self?
Drake, I'm going to let you handle that one.
It's a lot. All right. Higher self. Well, it depends on which one.
Yeah.
You basically have two levels. The first one you need to learn about is the psychic level. You need to learn how to move around as a spirit. You need to learn that some things will burn your fingers and others won't. You need to learn that some solid objects that you should be able to fly through don't quite work that way, and when you bust your head on the wall, you go, that was real intelligent. I shouldn't have done that. The actual fullness of higher self is the spirit in its entirety. Assimilation or full connectedness between an individual's physical self, their mental capability, capacities, etc., your understanding of the psychic in terms of some of the simple things that you can do and some things you shouldn't do and that sort of deal, leads you to the culmination of unity. This is pretty much in itself a transitory format, not a transition in and of itself, but a transitory experience. I have experienced it. You would be, and so everyone I know and everyone out there in the world today would be extraordinarily shocked at how nice it is. And Moody Blue said, now you know how nice it feels. Woo! It's sort of like going down the roller coaster, big hill, on the start. You're going down there and you're going, oh. And yet it's as excitingly enjoyable as that. And you don't bust your butt on the bottom. It's just like the roller coaster. It keeps going, keeps going, keeps going, as long as you wish it to go. Now, there are limitations in this, and for good reason. An individual who masters many of the aspects of psychic sciences increases their capability mentally, just like a muscle. If you go too far into it, you work it too hard, it gets sore. A lot of people end up with a sore head, headaches, things of this nature. The reason is that you stretched things just a little bit too far. When you get it into a reality realm where, okay, I went too far that one, maybe if I only go to this level, and you keep doing that, then you get the capability of going beyond the part that made you sore the first time a little bit. Ooh, well, we can go up to there. Wow, the weights get heavier and you can lift more and your muscles get stronger, and off and down the road you go. This is part of what I suggest as a preparatory process that each and every individual on this planet should try to exercise. Can you mentally influence somebody? Look at somebody you've never seen before in your whole life and have them turn around and look at you. Think about being able to not necessarily dominate, but just simply offer an influence. The more innocent the influence, the more easily acceptable it is to the situation. You're saying, I want to see what that person looks like. And they turn around and look at you. You see what they look like. That is about as innocent as it can get. Being able to comfort a child who is in some sort of distress, whether it's I don't want to go to bed and I'm going to complain or whatever it may be, and cause that child to find the peace and the calm and the ability to let go and just fall asleep is one of the most useful things parents can find. Sometimes a stranger needs to do it. Sometimes a simple distraction will take care of the problem. So, the variation, as I said, you need to approach these things as a child because, in effect, you're stepping out, learning to walk, and that's how simple it is. Next.
Question for Sunfire. What do you think will happen with criminal psychopaths, pedophiles, and rapists? Will ascending automatically make their brains operate more normally? And what do other races have effective ways to help these people?
Well, for one, generally speaking, these kinds of I want to say disorders, but I know it's not the proper term here, don't show up in positive races, and they generally don't show up in the neutrals. And I would say it's a different, it would vary from one group to the next when it comes to the negatives. But I know the transition will help a lot of that, but I also know that the ET are hoping to be able to help heal as many of them as possible prior to the transition. Basically, what is causing those imbalances, there's the term I was looking for here. What is causing those imbalances in the brain is generally either chemical based, which is the brain, parts of the brain chemistry, or something that is genetic, or something along those lines. And the things that are based on the chemical makeup of the organic brain will be corrected when the transition from an organic carbon matter base to a fine crystalline matter base takes place. And so a lot of them, they'll be, hopefully they'll be healed prior to that, but I know the transition will also have a very positive effect on those as well.
Okay. You have mentioned that you use conscious bilocation to work with the Silver Legion. Could you explain what you mean?
It's literally where the term being in two places at once comes from. Conscious bilocation is where you're actually physically, and mentally awake and able to extend your consciousness out to a different location, whether it's a higher dimension, different spot on the planet, something like that, and be able to consciously do things in both places. As to, the difference with most people is they have to either go into some sort of meditation, or they have to, their physical body has to be sleeping, or they have to have an out-of-body experience, which is a different thing.
I'd love to hear much more about different ET culture, history, and special gifts that run in each race, such as the Procyon's natural gift for time travel. Would it be possible to have a short segment on each show where you guys pick a particular space culture to enlighten us?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if we'll, leave it to a particular segment for each show, but considering that we're looking at a new format for our shows, we can certainly probably approach doing an entire show on the various cultures and races and different aspects of them, all rolled into one show. As I mean, in the very near future, there's going to be like I don't know when. I will say soon. And, I know everybody hates the word soon, but I'm going to use it soon. There will be, as the Federation intends, and as I've mentioned in previous shows, there will be what would be the rough equivalent of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy released to the entire population and made available in every possible format that would, in every possible language all around the planet, that will be a guide for, anybody that wants to learn about the various cultures and races, at least within the Federation and the Silver Legion and the other, independent groups and members. And then, we'll take it from there and beyond that. But it'll be something that we'll be putting out as soon as it's possible.
I have always wondered what happened to Theseus when he crossed over, ever since I heard Alex Collier tell us that this happened. Was Theseus born as a baby into 6D, and if so, do you know the name he goes by? Or what is he doing?
I don't have that information. As far as I understand it, he would have been reborn reborn as a baby into another life in the sixth dimension. But I will do my best to, beyond that, try and find the rest of the information. I don't have it personally at the moment.
Okay. Tanath said the sun will turn blue. What happens then, and is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a very positive thing, and it's more of a white with a blue hue to it, and it's for the sun to have the ability to exist and vibrate at that dimension. And so, yeah, it's a very positive thing. It'll also make the sun a lot more stable. It won't be having as many flares and gurgles and burps and everything else as it's currently having. And so, I mean, definitely it'll be a very positive thing. And then the light will be, that it'll be emanating from the sun will be a lot more in harmony with the higher dimensional beings that we're all going to become, that remain on the planet.
Okay. Are there really multiples of each of us living simultaneously on different levels?
I would say across different realities, yeah. Different realities and timelines and different universes, yes.
Okay. Is the Adamic race the beginning race on Earth that lived in the Garden of Eden, the first root race?
Drake, you want to take that one?
How is it I always end up with questions like that?
Because you're the one that has a better base for stuff like that?
You said the name was Polarians. Drake? Oops. Right, we'll have to see if we can get Drake back. We'll go on to the next question.
Okay.
I visited a rainbow city in an astral dream, and it was beautiful, and I remember very particular things about it. What I do not know, though, and maybe one of you can help me, is where it is, or where it's located, and is it in inner Earth?
I would say it's probably not in inner Earth. I've not heard of any rainbow cities in inner Earth. Beyond that, I wouldn't be able to tell, because I mean it could be it could be anywhere in the astral realm. It could be in any dimension. It could be on any planet. Just a rainbow city doesn't really give me much detail. If you could provide more detail in the future, that would be a lot more help. That might be able to, better narrow down the likely location of it.
Okay. Are the EDs shutting down the nuclear weapons?
Yeah, they are, and they have been, and they continue to do so. We've got to have all the nuclear stuff off the planet before the transition, and we will be able to do that. So, of course, yes.
Right. Are there markers in our DNA that don't change?
I don't. I think I'll pass on that one.
What is it you know about the jinn or the genies?
They're, from what I understand, they're spiritual beings. I don't know a lot. Like I said, it's probably going to be a better question for Drake.
Okay. How can we learn to have lucid dreams first? Then can we follow your recommendations on astral traveling?
I would suggest people buy Drake's book and also do some research.
I was going to say that.
Yeah. I would say do some research online, but more than anything, buy Drake's book. He explains how to do astral travel and all that.
Okay. In the last show, somebody, I think it was a couple of weeks back now, somebody mentioned about having headaches after listening to the show. And I am feeling the same sort of discomfort after the show. It takes about 2 to 3 days to let it go. Is the AC and or the Silver Legion working on that? I think that goes back to the shielding.
Right, yeah, definitely it goes back to the shielding, grounding, centering, and also I do know the Federation and the Silver Legion is looking into it. I don't know about the AC. That would be a question that would have to be asked to Tolik. Tolik is the one that speaks for the AC. So that I couldn't answer that question as far as the Andromeda Council's involvement. I do know that the Federation and the Silver Legion are aware of it and they're looking into it.
Right. Will the new 3D planet be populated with all types of animals we currently have on Earth? And will the 3D people be bringing them with them?
I think there are going to be some of the various animals that will be brought from Terra to the pristine planet. There's also some animal life that is already there, and there's also some animals that are on the biospheres that are going to be the transport from the other two that came with the other two races that are currently on there. So it's going to be a combination of what is already there and native to the planet, and then also animals that come from Terra, and then also animals that come from the other planets of the other races that are going to the pristine planet with the Terrans.
Okay. Where are we now? Will we be able to transport seeds and plants that we are used to here, or would that be prohibited as it might interfere with the life already living and growing on the new planet?
I think it's going to depend on the individual plant and the individual seeds. I know that they won't permit any of the GMO seeds or plants. So it would have to be plants that are still in their natural form, and that would be determined to not be in any way hostile or harmful to the already established environment.
Okay. Is there enough time for the Andromedans to come down for their proposed meet and greets? This was to be a gradual, pleasant way of meeting our off-world friends, as reported by Tolek.
Yes, definitely there's still enough time. When the ET start, making their landings, things are going to start happening, in a much more rapid procession. So, yeah, there's still a lot of time.
Okay. Trying to get Drake back.
Mm-hmm.
Will our vehicles still operate after the transition?
I think they will. I think so. Yeah. There may be some that won't, depending on depending on what they're made of and that kind of thing. But in the instance that they don't and that they won't, then we'll be providing vehicles and transport methods and stuff, and there will be other options available.
Okay.
So whatever doesn't work will be replaced with something that does.
Right. Next question. How much stuff will the 3Ds be able to take with them? And will what's left behind be automatically dissolved into energy for the planet?
As far as I understand it, I was not given that kind of detail, so I don't know. I think that would be something that would be better proposed to Tolik, because Tolik knows more about what is going on with, what the limitations of that are or aren't.
Okay. When we get to 4D, how long will it take to learn to sing like the 4D is? That's a bit stupid, that question. Will we have the ET technology just to turn it back into energy and give it back to Gaia, since that is where it was stolen from in the first place?
Turn what back into matter and give it back to Gaia?
Yeah. It says, matter back into energy and give it back to Gaia, since that is where it was stolen from in the first place.
Well, I think a lot of that will happen on its own with the transition, and as far as the rest of it, it's kind of like I don't think that'll be an issue.
Okay. Will the event remove the nuclear plants, their waste, and the disastrous morass of contamination that continues to further affect the Japanese people and their country? Or will this be something that we Terrans must attend to after the big event?
This whole event thing, it's not going to happen I believe it was Cobra that is defining this event. That it's not going to happen the way Cobra explains it. As far as the nuclear waste and stuff around the planet, it's being neutralized by the ET, but what also will be done is Terrans will be given technology that neutralizes and cleans up radioactive material, and yes, the Terrans will be involved in the cleanup efforts. Fukushima is not as radioactive as it's being made out to be. They're using that as another fear porn, scare tactic.
Yeah, sure are. I don't know whether we've got Drake back. Checking now. Bear with me a minute.
Yeah, not a problem.
Drake? No. No, he's been gone for about 10 minutes.
Oh dear.
So it's just the two of us. Right, okay. Let me just close that down. Right, on we go. Where are we? Will we know a few hours in advance when the transition is to hit?
Most likely the population will know more than just, within a few hours. As we get closer to it happening, we'll be able to more clearly define when it will happen.
Is that you on, Drake? No, still not there. Keeps dropping.
Oh, somebody must not be happy. It must be our fan club.
Yes. Let's try this one. I'm just checking the area codes. So.
I'm here.
Hi.
Yay!
You finally found me. Good deal.
All right.
I don't know what you're going to do with me, but, enjoy yourself. Well, I had a phone go dead in the middle of everything.
Uh-huh.
And it does all kind of fun switchies and stuff when that happens. So yeah. Anyway, go ahead with the questions.
Right. Well, we'll give Sunfire a rest. And question for you, Drake. Can you elaborate on the technology that Neil Keenan mentions in his most recent update? A weapon that can precision target and disappear Cabal members. Do you want to touch on that bit first?
Yeah. I'll touch on some of the things that people don't know, but are mostly going to be on the Sunday show. And I'm not going to run into certain specifics until after I talk to some people about it first. But yeah. Now, each individual entity on the planet has a set of fingerprints. This goes to their base energy pattern as they are in terms of individuals. What transpires is that the individual then can be targeted according to that pattern. That's how that energy weapon or weapon works. And I'll leave it at that for right now, okay?
Right. What activity can be done in 3D that will not be possible in 4D? A loaded question, that. Pass. Next.
Hello,
ETs...
Sunfire.
Is you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Is that my question or is that her question? Or is it anybody?
I think it's anybody's question. I was going to say that there really isn't any limitation to what can be done what can be done in 4D that, can't be done in 3D. Or vice, I think, go ahead.
There'll be some differences, but not as extreme as people think. In other words, life's going to continue similarly to what it is here. It'll just be a base difference. And I'm going to leave it at that. That's easier.
Okay. What is this Zora from Hollow Earth Network?
Zara is part of the Galactic Federation of Liars. Another one of those channeled entities that's part of the network of reptoid, the reptoid peoples.
Are the Zeta Reticuli treated as greys or as human kind of race?
They're greys.
Okay. Are the Emerald tablets that Trop wrote the truth?
I would say a little bit yes and a little bit no. Some of it is and some of it isn't. Because when you think about it, when it was written, it was what was written and what is actually translated are sometimes there's a lot of information that is lost in the translation. But I would say there's some basis of truth and true information in it, and some of it's not.
Okay.
Drake, what do you think?
Well, seeing as how somebody mentioned that before, I decided to go read them and study them. And some of the information is reasonable. I'm not going to say it's real accurate because a lot of it is not. Mm-hmm. Some of it is actual imagination. And some of it is obviously of an origin that is not in our best interest. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Next question. To Drake, can you give us any details of the mentioned hundreds of angels or ETs that have been here for weeks, as mentioned by Mr. Keenan?
I could, but I'm not going to because it's not my place to out them. Usually when those particular entities make themselves available, it is not for public consumption. However, that was done, and hopefully it was not an overstepping of bounds where somebody would say, please don't say anything. Some of the messages aren't given in full for varying reasons, whether somebody misses that part to get excited and go, wow, man, or whatever. In some cases, as I said, the information can be sensitive. I'm going to run the whole scenario past some people and see what happens. Okay?
Right. During the actual change to 4D, will Source and Gaia transform the concrete roads and parking lots, leaving grassland in its wake?
I don't think that's how it works.
No. Okay. I've heard that in Drake's book it gives instructions on meditation. So I can't afford to buy the book, so I'm asking Drake if you could give me some basics on how to meditate and how I will know if I'm doing it right.
Yeah, okay. How to meditate? Meditation requires quiet until you become an adept. The first thing you have to learn is how to totally quiet your mind after you find a quiet place to do so. Second thing is that you need to learn to look within yourself rather than outside in order to find what you're looking for that you're supposed to be. The fourth part of it is to extend that. The manner in which you do that is to feel, in terms of an envisionment, getting up and walking across the room. Just simply that, nothing complicated. When you learn to extend yourself in that manner, also practice turning around and seeing yourself sitting on the couch. Even though you just got up and you walk across the room and you can see yourself, it's a mind blower and it's a lot of fun. Then some people freak out and immediately return. What was that? Oh my goodness. Okay. The term meditation is basically that which you attune yourself into higher capabilities than the physicality allows. So when you're doing it correctly when you find, first of all, the quiet place, and that will be made available to you if, and this is the sleep problem everybody has, turning that noise off in your mind to a point where you don't have any noise at all. At that point, you'll find that your mind feels like an expansion, that you are sensitive to a great deal of things. You'll hear noises that you can't hear otherwise, in many cases, or experience things that you didn't know was even available at all, in many cases. In some cases, you won't notice much of anything at all. It'll just be totally quiet for a change, which is in and of itself a nice accomplishment. The other aspect is to look to yourself in terms of, do you really see, in terms of the images you've seen online, the higher self? It should be light, nothing more, nothing less. It can be a self-image, but not necessarily the same. In terms of extending yourself, and this is a neat trick, become aware of a plant or some animal and attempt to express to it your best regard. My goodness, you're an interesting plant. I never really looked at you this closely before. Far out. Well, same thing with the animal, or whatever you choose. As you become adept at these things, you will find that your meditative quality has taken great leaps and bounds to the direction you want it to go. Now, people do not understand that there is a difference between our physicality and the psychic realm. The psychic realm and the full spiritual realm. So be aware that two things. you're protected, and you can never get lost. Those two things need to be kept in mind. Most people, when they first find themselves extended, freak out. Whether they turn around and look at themselves or not, they find themselves standing across the room and they know they're sitting on the couch and they go, and you slam dunk yourself home. And you come, and all of a sudden you open your eyes and go, wow, man, what was that? Okay, this is not an unusual or abnormal experience. When a person is lying in bed at night, just before you go to sleep, you get this terrible falling sensation and you freak out and twitch and wake up. Well, I hate to tell you this, but you ain't falling. Rising. Big difference, but same sensation. Yeah. These are some of the things that don't translate well to the physical, to the 3D from the psychic, from the 4D. This is an example of that. The twitchy leg syndrome is something trying to make sure you don't go into deep enough sleep in order to experience what you should be. Not difficult once you get your mind around it. And you can instruct yourself before you go to sleep what kind of action and reaction you're going to have to whatever stimuli is supplied. In other words, no, my legs ain't going to twitch. I want to see what's on the other side of that door. I was just about to grab the handle, and somebody twitched, and I woke up. Well, tell it you're going to grab the handle, whether it likes it or not, and no, don't you twitch. And find out that you can actually then walk up to that door, turn that handle, and actually go through the door. It's like showing somebody a doorway. I can show it to them all day. And it's up to them to step through. It's not up to anyone else. I can illuminate a pathway that there is such a thing for an individual to self-discover. The point you begin to really seriously self-discover and become adept at it, the pathway disappears because all it was how to get there. And people do not grasp the impact and import of these things. But practice. That's the thing. Practice till your head hurts. Concentrate on not concentrating. You want to have some fun? That ought to keep you busy. Next.
All right. We've got about 5 minutes left. So, next question. People today, at least one half of our population, are not awake. So how is the ascension, the shift, going to happen when so many don't have a grip on today, let alone the fourth dimension?
Well, the shift itself is a natural evolution of the planet and the solar system, and so whether the population is completely, entirely awake or not does not affect directly the ascension transition process, but I am very confident in that the ET and the population will be able to handle everything that needs to be taken care of in proper time before the transition happens.
I think we've had this question before. We'll put it in. If the moon is an artificial satellite, will it be removed after the transition?
Yes, the moon is an artificial satellite, but no, it's not going to be removed. That's not necessary. It is actually needed to remain in place because of its effects that it has on the tides and everything else that is, important to the ecological stability of the planet.
Okay. All right. I think that's pretty much up to date now. Do you want to finish up, Drake?
Well, yeah, I can finish up. The idea of these shows is to bring about the knowledge of the ancients in conjunction with the knowledge of ETs. One very well past, just as advanced as the ETs in many ways, and ETs or angels, whichever handle you like, have a basis usable aspect of those same technologies. They're advanced from what some of the ancient was, and in some ways, some of this ancient knowledge is more advanced than theirs. But the idea of this show is to bring you ET to bring you knowledge so that you can talk about it intelligently. You can think about the questions you want to know, not the questions that you just feel like you want to ask. Think about something you want to know. And I say, get her done.
Get her done.
Do you want to say something, Sunfire?
Well, kind of, I think Drake put it well, but I think, the population, guys, start focusing on your self-respect, self-determination, self-awareness, self-responsibility, and, self-control, self-love, self-knowledge, self-confidence, self-empowerment. Stand in your power. Stand in your strength. Recognize your own divinity, as I said earlier. Don't be afraid to be who you are and be yourself. And take your power back and wield it and hold it and, use it for positive pursuits. And don't let the bad guys, keep turning things negative.
Okay. That just about covers it. Right. Well, my first show is now complete, and I've enjoyed it immensely. I hope you all did too.